Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes and then we're going to get started.
I hope you can get out for a walk today too. It's really nice out today.
I know, I know. It says 72 now. It's a little
Hmm.
cloudy, but I'll take cloudy over snow any day.
Yep.
I was surprised to see that it's going from like 75-ish today to like 40 tomorrow.
I know. I know. I think we
Soon
got
enough.
probably gonna have a few more weeks of that before we can like get consistently 60s at least.
Yep. Just going to give it one more minute here before we get started. Want to be mindful of everyone's time today.
Yep, people are still steadily popping in. Blair, someone mentioned in the Q&A that they're hearing a big echo. Are you getting anything on your end?
No.
Hmm. I will mute myself because I won't need to be on for much to see if that helps.
Okay. I'm going to get started here just to be mindful of everyone's time. I know we've only got a short window to talk today. So thank you all for taking the time to join us. Today we're going to be talking about expanding your benefits without increasing your costs. So before we jump into the actual presentation, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Blair Booth. I'm a senior benefits consultant with the Nova Benefits Group. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide here, but what I think is most relevant to today's conversation is that a big part of my role is helping employers maximize the value of their benefits programs while also keeping a strong focus on cost containment. As many of you know, that's especially important in today's environment. Renewals are increasing and budgets are tight, and this is just a big issue for many across all industries. So hopefully today you're going to leave here with some relevant information to better guide your organization through your upcoming renewals. Quick introduction of Innovo. At Innovo Benefits Group, we support employers across the full spectrum of benefits and HR needs. So that includes benefit strategy, renewal planning, employee education, engagement, benefits administration, compliance, COBRA support, as well as fractional HR services. So all of our teams work cohesively together to help take some of the day-to-day responsibilities off your plate, so that way you can focus more on being strategic in your role. So some housekeeping items before we get started. You're going to see some polls throughout. These help us to keep the presentation engaging and also help us form our conversation to our audience. So if you can participate in those, we'd really appreciate it. We've got our Q&A feature here as well. Any questions that you have throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask the questions there. Taryn's going to respond to some of the questions, or she'll interrupt me and we'll answer questions live, or we can save them at the end to respond to as well. You are going to receive a copy of this presentation over the next few days. So if you miss something, if you want to see it, you want to future reference it, you can absolutely do so. We are going to have a short survey at the end of the presentation. This just helps us to better understand and tailor our content for the future. So if you're able to respond to that, we'd really appreciate it. And then lastly, the presentation is eligible for both SHRM and HRCI continuing education credits, which will be included for you at the end. All right, so we're going to kick it off with a poll here. Taryn, if you wouldn't mind launching our first poll, we're going to ask you about the number of employees within your organization. All right, thank you all so much for answering. We've got a nice mixed bag here. We've got some employers in the 0 to 19, most in the 50 to 100 plus uh, group size, which is good. So as we talk through some of these benefits, I think you're going to see some relevancies in what you offer currently, but then also some ways to better build out your benefits package. Okay, so let's get started with what we're seeing in the market right now. It's no secret that medical costs are rising and they're putting real pressure on employers. So we're seeing national increases projected in the high single digits, with many renewals coming in even higher, often in the double digits before any cost mitigation strategies are applied. So as we're seeing renewals come out, you'll see two different surveys on the bottom here. We've got independent surveys. That's Aon, Mercer, those larger organizations. They're projecting inflation anywhere between 8 and 10%. What we're actually seeing among the carriers in Massachusetts and nationally is that renewals are actually being released at higher than what the national inflation is. So medical renewals are coming out of the gate already really high. So right out of the gate, employers are being asked to manage significantly higher costs. At the same time, as you all know, HR teams are being asked to do more with less. In fact, the majority of employers cite that rising benefit costs are a top concern, and many are shifting their strategy away from adding new spend and focusing on optimizing what they already have. While all of this is happening, employee expectations aren't slowing. Employees are looking for more personalized, more supportive benefits, especially around mental health, financial wellness, flexibility, and things like that. Benefits continue to be one of the biggest drivers of attraction and retention, so super important that we focus on those and make sure that they're, all competitive within the market. And so, what this really creates is a challenging environment for all of us in charge of benefits and employee experience. Costs are going up, expectations are going up, and all the while, employers are being asked to balance both. Oops. So, we mentioned medical renewal costs are increasing. So, many of you are probably wondering why. Many of you probably already know, but we're seeing continued growth in specialty medications, so things like GLP-1s, and higher utilization of all specialty drugs overall. We're seeing high cost claims, particularly in areas like cancer, mental health, and musculoskeletal issues. At the same time, aging populations are utilizing more care. Provider costs continue to rise due to labor shortages and higher reimbursement rates. And overall, these aren't short term trends. These are systemic drivers that are continuing to push costs higher and higher year over year. So, whatever fix we have here can't be short term. It's got to be a very strategic, long term strategy for managing benefits. Because as years go on, we're going to continue to see costs increase from 2026 and far beyond that as well. Okay, so we've got another poll here. So, what was your most recent medical renewal rate? And this is just more for our personal information. I wonder about where medical renewals are coming in. We know firsthand from prospects and clients that come in, they tell us, what the renewals are, and that's the initial renewal rate. So trying to understand where everybody else is going to give us a better perspective here. Okay, so we're seeing people mostly in the 6 to 10% range, some of the 11 to 15%, and a handful of people over 20%. I hope that that's not where you ended up. I hope that that was just your initial renewal and that you ended up closer to that 6 to 10%, maybe even below that. What we're seeing here is no negative to flat renewals, which is interesting, but not surprising at all. So as we start to see these renewals coming in, I think that we're going to start to see them trend further and further up. So unfortunately, I don't think that this is the first year or the last year that we're going to see those higher renewals, which makes this conversation all the more relevant. Okay, so what we're seeing more and more is that employers are being faced with challenges, more challenges than before when managing their renewals. This is where the employer and specifically HR teams start to feel the pressure. You're being pulled in so many different directions. Finance is trying to control costs. Employees are expecting more relevant and modern benefits. Recruiting needs you to stay competitive with the market, and all the while costs are not letting up. We're still continuing to see those rising increases. So everyone has a different idea of what a successful renewal looks like within your organization, and HR is stuck in the middle of trying to balance all of it. So what may have worked in the past years just isn't as effective in today's environment as things continue to shift and costs rise, and it really requires a different, more strategic approach. So that's where the opportunity comes in. Even though costs are rising, it doesn't mean the value of your benefits has to decrease. What we often see is that employers already have access to a number of programs and resources. They're just not fully utilizing or communicating them. So instead of thinking we need to spend more to improve our benefits, the thinking shift is really to how do we get more value out of what we already have? So then the question becomes, how do we actually solve for this? How do you stay competitive, meet employee expectations, and manage rising costs without just continuing to spend more? So the next things that we're going to talk about in this deck is a framework for how you can be a little bit more strategic when it comes to your renewal decisions. So instead of reacting year to year, we'll talk about how to make a more take a more strategic approach on how you design and evolve your benefits programs year over year. Okay, so step one here. Step one is about understanding where you stand. So before you make any changes at all, it's important to step back and look at your benefits program in the context of the market. How does your offering compare to similar employers? Where are you competitive? Where are there gaps? And just as important, are your benefits aligned with your actual workforce? That's going to be extremely important here. Not every gap needs to be filled, but the right gaps, especially those tied to attraction, retention, employee needs, those are where you really want to focus your attention. This benchmarking step is extremely important and helps to ensure that you're being intentional and strategic rather than reactive when it comes to your benefits decisions. A demographics analysis of your employees is always especially helpful, especially when looking to understand what benefits your employees may appreciate. Because even though we offer something, if your employees aren't engaged with it or don't appreciate it, it goes unrecognized, and that doesn't help your benefit situation whatsoever. So we really want to make sure that we're understanding where things lie. Benchmarking is extremely important. It should happen each year. You want to make sure that the people that you're competing against for talent, that your benefits are aligned or better than theirs. Okay, so another poll here, benchmarking. Does your organization conduct benefit benchmarking? And this can be on an annual basis. It can be every other year. Just in general, just knowing where your benefits stand is important. So just out of curiosity. All right, very nice. So the majority say yes. That's great. So it's good to know exactly where everything lines up. So in this context of the last slide, looking at that benchmarking year over year, just making sure that you're understanding where your benefits are competitive or not competitive is what's going to give you the most insight into what benefits you should be implementing going forward. So that's going to be the first step here. The second step is to look at what you already have. What are you already offering? What we typically find is that employers already have access to a number of programs and resources that just aren't being highlighted or fully utilized. Once you have an understanding of what benefit gaps you're looking to fill, understanding what you already have access to will help you fill those gaps. For example, if you have a younger demographic that's focused on healthy lifestyles or fitness, you may look to your medical carrier. Many carriers include things like fitness reimbursements or telehealth, but employees either don't know about them or don't understand how to use them. For those of you in Massachusetts, Blue Cross Blue Shield in Massachusetts, for example, offers $150 per family per year reimbursement for fitness, as well as a separate $150 per family per year for weight loss programs. Harvard Pilgrim does something similar but different, but those are different benefits that are offered already through your carrier that you can easily plug into your benefit strategy and make sure that you're communicating those to employees. If your employees are looking for mental health support, you may look for mental health services within your EAP. Sometimes your medical carrier will offer an EAP at no cost. And then also many life and disability carriers also offer an embedded EAP within their disability plans. There's a lot of real value there, whether it's counseling, legal support, financial guidance, but utilization tends to be very low on those EAP programs just because of lack of awareness. For employee discount programs, for example, you may look broadly. Your dental and vision carriers tend to offer some good discounts on LASIK or non-prescription sunglasses, where you may find more medical-related discounts to your medical provider. So things like massage therapy or fitness equipment, those are all discounts that the medical carriers have discount programs within them that you can share with employees as well. So before adding anything new, the first step is to really take inventory of what you already have available to you within each one of your carriers to ensure you're getting the full value out of it. So the next step here, I would recommend doing a full audit. So looking at your carrier, your medical carrier, for example, going through asking them what the value adds are. What do they offer to you and to your employees? Sometimes they've got different weight loss services or programs, or like different nutrition programs that are available to employees, and where they offer scales and wearables to help employees lose weight and keep it off. There's different smoking cessation programs within your medical carriers. They also offer things like telehealth and virtual care. The EAPs that we talked about have a whole robust offering within them. They've got so many different services, again, that go underutilized. Those discount programs, so care navigation tools, cost transparency tools, those are all within your medical providers. And while those are not, specifically benefits, they're value adds that your employees will probably appreciate, especially when they're spending more money out of their pockets on a lot of these medical plans. Your life and disability have add-ons, things like travel assistance, identity theft, fraud protection services. Some of those things are already embedded within a lot of the plans that you have right now and just need to be communicated. So adding those to your open enrollment education or even your mid-year education will help to keep employees informed and help them perceive the benefits to be more than maybe they actually are. Okay, so step three is focused on filling in some of your identified gaps with 100% employee paid benefits. So those are voluntary benefits. So instead of adding more employer funded benefits, you can introduce options to allow employees to customize their coverage based on their individual needs, whether that's financial protection, help with out of pocket medical costs, or support for everyday expenses. These benefits can all be offered on a fully employee paid basis, which is nice. So, from an employer's perspective, you're able to expand your benefits without increasing your bottom line. What we're seeing in survey data and with clients is that employees are actually interested in these types of benefits. Some employers, perceive these benefits to just be extra, and then employees don't actually want them, but they're just going to offer them because they're nice to have. We're seeing the exact opposite actually within survey data and within our clients. Employers are seeing improvements in satisfaction, retention, and overall engagement when they're offered. And the way that that's measured is usually through employee benefit surveys. So they'll send out a survey at the beginning of the year. They'll ask what types of benefits employees are interested in. They'll implement those benefits, and then after the fact, they'll gauge their satisfaction based on the changes in the ratings from employees. So again, this isn't about adding more. It's about being intentional with how you fill those gaps and in a way that works for both the employer and the employee. So there's a lot of different options within the voluntary benefit world. You'll see income and financial protection here. So things like the worksite benefits, the critical illness, accident, hospital indemnity. You could even offer like a short-term disability buy-up, which would be a buy-up from your employer paid policy if you offer that. There's things like financial wellness and protection, so legal plans, identity theft protection. Some student loan assistance programs are allowed to be employee paid platforms. The majority are employer sponsored, but there are some that are employee sponsored. You got your lifestyle and supplemental benefits. Pet insurance has become a huge benefit in the benefits world. Employees love pet insurance. I think if you look at your demographic analysis, when we mostly look at demographic analysis, we see that millennials tend to really enjoy the pet insurance. We've also got home and auto group discounts that you could offer, supplemental life insurance that's in addition to your employer paid benefit. Also, caregiver, family support, and cancer coverage. So, different types of voluntary benefits that you may look to integrate into your benefits program that will cost you nothing. A lot of the time with the voluntary benefits, it's important to keep in mind that there's participation guidelines, and those are going to vary throughout carrier and yeah, those will vary throughout the carriers, and the participation requirements are going to vary as well. So some carriers may have a lower threshold, some carriers may have a higher threshold, but you'll want to pay attention to those because you'll need to meet those in order to offer these benefits. Okay, so why voluntary benefits? There's a lot of data out there from industry surveys around how employees perceive voluntary benefits. While it can vary by organization, what we're constantly seeing is that employees do value having access to these options. It gives them the ability to customize their benefits package based on their individual needs, whether that's additional financial protection or help managing out of pocket costs through those worksite benefits. And from the employer perspective, it's a way to enhance the overall benefits offering and deliver more value. One thing to keep in mind is that with many of these voluntary benefit offerings, as we talked about, you'll need to meet those participation guidelines. So you'll definitely want to explore that when you're offering these and make sure that you're communicating that to employees. So that way, if you don't meet participation, they understand that the benefit may not be able to be offered. So some interesting stats here. 90% of employees say that voluntary benefits help manage out-of-pocket costs. 77% of employees say that voluntary benefits are essential to a comprehensive benefits package. And then 8 in 10 employees are more likely to work for a company that offers supplemental benefits. So as you're thinking about attraction and retention, these are definitely a lever that you may want to look into pulling for this year. Okay, Another poll here, voluntary benefits. So which voluntary benefits does your organization currently offer? All right, we've got a nice spread here. So a lot of EAP, that makes a lot of sense. Those are embedded. Voluntary life disability, pet insurance, happy to see that that's taking up here. Tuition reimbursement, a lot of wellness programs, and some other. Interesting. Very good. So there's a nice spread here. So those are a nice way to add to your benefits package without any additional cost. So always good to look into those. Okay, and step four is really about being disciplined with where you choose to invest. So if there isn't any benefit budget available to you at all for the year, it should be really focused on the areas that will have the greatest impact. So whether that's retention, employee experience, or closing a critical gap identified earlier in the process, it's truly not about adding more benefits. It's about making the right investments, measuring what works, and scaling accordingly. So one of the biggest goals here is to complement our existing benefits, not to take away or duplicate any existing offerings. The most successful benefit strategies use a multi-year approach. So take your time to be thoughtful when using your money to purchase new benefits. So for this year, if you're facing a really high renewal increase, what you'll want to do is you'll want to make sure that whatever you're planning to add can be thoughtful. For example, you wouldn't want to add a standalone EAP if you've already got an EAP through your medical provider or through your life and disability provider. You may not want to spend your money or time focusing on an additional wellness program if you've already got wellness offerings within your carriers that are untapped. You may want to take that money and focus it on something else, like adding an additional employer contribution to your medical plan or things like that. So you really just want to be thoughtful and strategic about where you're putting your money. So that's what this slide's about here. So what this chart highlights is not all investments are created equal. So for example, on the financial wellness side, even something like a modest HSA contribution or access to financial tools can have meaningful impact on employee stress levels and overall engagement. On the mental health side, enhancing your EAP or adding a point solution may directly impact productivity and retention, which is something that both HR and leadership care about. You'll also see workforce specific benefits. This is really about aligning your strategy to your population, as we talked about before. For some groups, that may be fertility or caregiver support. For others, it could be flexibility or lifestyle benefits. So what we mean here is if you look at your demographic analysis and you see that you've got a lot of younger employees in their 30s, you may want to focus more on fertility coverage rather than the caregiver support. The caregiver support is going to really be in that sandwich generation. So just really focusing on what you're doing here on your group, not just on what you think may be popular. Wellness incentives are another area where a relatively small investment can drive strong engagement, especially if they're tied to a behavior or participation. And then finally, plan design enhancements. Sometimes the biggest impact isn't adding something new, but improving on how your current plans function. There are ways to offer more value to employees without adding more cost to the employer bottom line through thoughtful contribution strategies, etc. So the key takeaway here is if you're going to spend strategically and focus on the areas that are going to drive real outcomes, not just add more to the plan. So when we look at that gap, we'll want to make sure that whatever we're spending our money on is going to provide a strategic value. Okay, so next slide here, extending the value of your benefit strategy. When we talk about enhancing benefits, it's also important to think beyond the benefits themselves. So think about flexibility, education, workplace culture. All of those things play a significant role in how employees perceive their overall experience. So for example, offering financial wellness tools is great, but pairing that with education sessions makes it much more impactful. So if you are spending your money on that financial wellness tool, making sure that you're educating on how that works. Rounding out the benefits package with some of the strategies listed here will help to reinforce and amplify the value of your overall benefits program. So these are also non-cost ways to add to the employee experience. So if you have, the option to allow for some flexible work schedules or remote or hybrid options, employees really value those. And so sometimes those things are valued more than an actual policy or benefit is, something that you're paying for, something that they're paying for. So trying to integrate, your company culture into your benefit strategy and making sure that those two things align is going to be extremely important here when trying to stretch your dollar. Because even though we can't, always add more value when it comes to contributions on the medical side, we may be able to offer more of a work-life balance. And employees value that just as much. Okay. And communication is key. So even the best benefit strategies won't work if employees don't understand what's available. So we talked about this. We definitely want to communicate what we have offered, even if we're not adding anything new. When we look at those benefits that we have embedded in our other benefits, we may want to make sure that we're communicating those for this year. Because even though they're not new benefits, employees may see them as new, which is going to add perceived value to your employees when they think about their benefits package. The biggest gap we see isn't benefits, it's awareness. So communication is going to be the key driver of value to your employees. Your employees want simple, clear guidance. They're going to need reminders throughout the year and education to help support their decisions. Mid-year education will help reinforce the decisions and hopefully make open enrollment decisions easier ongoing. So as long as we're supporting all the decisions that they've made during open enrollment, their perception of open enrollment is that it's a positive thing. Um, a variety of communication methods is also important, especially going back to that demographic-based needs. Some of your Gen Z employees may prefer email communications, where baby boomers prefer a phone call. And it's especially important with voluntary benefits where participation matters. It's super critical to clearly explain how they work and why they're valuable early on, so that way we can meet those participation guidelines. At the end of the day, benefits only deliver value when employees actually engage with them. So communication and the way that we share that information and making sure that we educate on that information is going to be paramount here. As an HR practitioner, you know your employees best. There are a million tools and point solutions out there for you to choose from, but not all are going to work well for your specific group. We always recommend providing a variety of options to help communicate the benefits clearly to different types of employees. As we talked about, the different generations may value different types of communications and may engage with those types of communications a little bit better. At Inova, we provide what you see here on the screen to all of our clients. Some of our clients utilize two options, some utilize most, some utilize all. Your strategy is truly going to depend on your specific group needs. So this right here is just an example list of things that you may choose to communicate and educate employees on. So AI benefit decision-making tools, those are new and up and coming. That's a really tech-forward way to share information with employees to allow them the option to put their personal information in to help them make decisions on their medical plans or other benefit options. With a mostly virtual workforce, the virtual benefit fairs are really nice. It allows you to add incentive behind participating or actively engaging with each one of your benefit booths, if you will. They're actually just tiles, but they're set up to be booths. So it almost mirrors the old school benefit fairs that we used to have. Mid-year carrier and general benefits education is going to be super important. So even though you're educating at open enrollment, a lot of the time employees aren't picking up on what you're actually educating on. They have to make decisions, and so their energy and their thoughts are focused on the decision that they're going to make for open enrollment and not necessarily understanding how to use the plan or to use the services within the plan. So offering mid-year education is going to be a really nice differentiator for you. You had those online benefits enrollment platforms. I'm sure many of you use these within your HRIS systems or otherwise. Having a detailed benefit information booklet is also important here. Employees need to be able to reference things throughout the year. So if they've got a question and they're maybe embarrassed to ask the question to you, they have a source document that they can go back to answer their questions pretty easily. We talked about those employee engagement surveys. Those are extremely important. I'm a huge data nerd, so I feel like I really enjoy the surveys in general. I like to be able to benchmark on how things improve. So if you're not offering engagement surveys now, it's definitely something to think about. It's really going to help you to build out your benefits package and make sure that it's really tailored to what your employees are looking for. Having personalized vendor meetings and materials is also really important, especially with those voluntary benefits. A lot of the carriers can personalize enrollment forms. If you're not using an HRS system, it makes it easier for employees to enroll. Also, having those vendor meetings is going to help with participation. They're going to really educate your employees on what each benefit's for and how it's going to really benefit them. So that helps to boost engagement when you have those as well. The last thing here is wellness and benefit education, employee email campaigns. These are really, really important. Being able to tie your wellness initiatives as an organization to what carriers are offering within their additional resources is going to help you. It's going to help employees be engaged with their medical plan. It's going to help them understand the value of it a little bit more. So instead of just having a negative thought like, oh, I'm paying a lot of money every time I go to the doctor, they're going to think, oh, well, they're also paying me $150 a year to go to the gym and be healthy. So there'll be some positive associations with the medical plan as well. So different ways to form that out as well. Okay. So to bring it all together, the goal isn't to add more benefits or increase spend year over year. It's to take a more intentional approach. So start by understanding where you stand in the market. That's going to be the biggest part here. Maximize the value of what you already have, fill gaps in a cost-effective way. And if you do choose to invest any money in benefits, make sure it's targeted and strategic. Then you can layer in employee experience and communication because that's what ultimately drives engagement and perceived value. And then when you take this approach, you can build a benefit strategy that feels competitive and comprehensive without increasing your bottom line. So it's a couple of different things that you want to all bring together here. So understanding where you are, making sure that you're understanding exactly what you're offering, what benefits may not be, common knowledge to employees, and really stressing those. Understanding where the gaps are in your benefits package based on benchmarking and based on employee need, and filling those gaps in strategically with 100% employee paid benefits. If you are investing, making sure that whatever money you're spending isn't going to be repetitive and that it's filling a different gap and it's going to bring you strategic feedback from your employees. And also making sure that your employee experience is rounded out with those additional policies or additional ways to add to your benefits package without spending money. And then the last step here is communication. As we talked about, the communication is going to be very, very important. If employees don't know what they're being offered, they aren't going to be able to value it. So making sure that we're stressing the benefits that we're offering and explaining them all to them in a really easy, digestible way for them. Okay, so we have some time here at the end for questions. Before we get to questions, Taryn's going to launch a survey. If you wouldn't mind answering the survey, that'd be very helpful for us. The way that you answer this helps us to better put together our webinars for the next time around. So it's pretty quick. I think it's only about 4 questions, which is nice. And then after this slide, we'll get into questions and I'll also share the Sherman HRCI codes.